Clashes at a protest site in San Francisco, and one of our own journalists attacked.
This man vandalized one of the group's radios. He then turned around and took a swing at me.
This as protesters gathered at APEC before President Biden's meeting with the Chinese regime leader. A powerful term times two, Biden again calling Xi Jinping a dictator. That comment and China's latest reactions. The Chinese regime is censoring a U.S. performing arts group in South Korea. We bring in the host of NTD's Capital Report to bring us the details of his investigation there. And a pair of iconic bamboo-munching bears could soon return to American soil, with the Chinese leader calling pandas envoys of friendship. Is the so-called panda diplomacy making a comeback? What do you think? Let us know below and subscribe if you haven't already. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Before we dive into today's news, make sure to use the link down below to subscribe to our newsletter. Each week we round up the highlights and controversies happening around China and the world and share an exclusive behind-the-scenes snapshot with our readers. Keep an eye out. The newsletter will land in your inbox Friday morning. Protesters gathered at the APEC summit in San Francisco on Wednesday ahead of President Biden's sit-down with the head of the Chinese Communist Party. They were holding banners calling to end the CCP's persecution of Falun Gong in China. But the event took a turn when an unidentified man started vandalizing the group's equipment and attacked NTD reporter Jason Blair. Take a look.
This man vandalized one of the group's radios. I then took out my phone and started filming him, trying to deter any more vandalism, but he still came back and grabbed one of the banners. He then turned around and took a swing at me, aiming for my phone. Just then, a plainclothes police officer restrained him and got him to leave the area.
The incident unfolded just a few blocks from the Moscone Center. Around there, heads of state and CEOs are met for APEC meetings. Protesters also seized the opportunity to make their voices heard.
Human rights in Tibet!
Demonstrations started to heat up outside of the hotel where the Chinese regime head is staying. On Wednesday, a few hundred pro-Tibet protesters marched up 5th Street in downtown. They were shouting from, quote, "Xi Jinping is not welcome here," to "Down with the CCP and Free Tibet." A few groups of Falun Gong practitioners also held banners there, calling to end the CCP's persecution of the practice in China. That's until a man, likely in his 20s, showed up.
At around 10 o'clock, some pro-CCP group came over here. One of them, a boy, kicked and destroyed our speakers. He also pulled down one of our banners and assaulted someone. That's a crime in the U.S., and we already called the police.
The pro-CCP group is reported to be hired by the New York Chinese consulate.
In this case, it definitely felt like he had premeditated this. It wasn't like he was walking by and, got in the spur of the moment.
The CCP is known for carrying out transnational repression operations on U.S. soil. Blair said the attack reminded him of an incident in New York City's Flushing neighborhood in 2022. An Asian man attacked information stands that sought to shed light on the CCP's persecution of Falun Gong. He has since been charged with a hate crime and criminal mischief in the 4th degree.
In America, we have freedom of speech, freedom of the press, but they don't have the right to, attack somebody and violently try to silence somebody or intimidate someone to not using their right for free speech.
Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is a peaceful cultivation practice based on the principles of truth, compassion, and tolerance. The practice gained popularity in China during the 1990s. That's until the Chinese regime turned the state against the practice in 1999 and started mass jailing and torturing the group.
President Biden doubling down on an early comment calling the head of the CCP a dictator, while Biden says he's trying to avoid conflicts. He also stresses the need to compete with Beijing and counter its aggression. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the Filoli estate in San Francisco, where the U.S.-China meeting took place.
So right before Biden left the press conference, it says that the head of the Chinese Communist Party, Xi Jinping, is a dictator, adding that China is a communist country.
President, after today, would you still refer to President Xi as a dictator? This is a term that we used earlier this year. Well, look, he is. I mean, he's a dictator in the sense that he is the guy who runs a country that is a communist country that's based on a form of government totally different than ours.
He also says that he brought up human rights issues, China's wrong detainment of U.S. citizens, as well as China's aggressive behaviors in the South China Sea.
And as I always do, I raised areas where the United States has concerns about the PRC's actions, including detained and exit banned U.S. citizens, human rights, and coercive activities in the South China Sea.
Biden also says that the U.S. rejects China's non-market practices, and thus as a senior Biden administration official told me that the U.S. is concerned over China's economic coercion toward U.S. allies such as Japan and South Korea. The two sides also agreed to resume military-to-military communications, which were cut off amid tensions. But China's aggression is still at the center of the spotlight, as the FBI have been warning about a rise in Chinese spy activities here in the U.S., and as there has been some 200 incidents of China's aggressive military actions.
Where PLA operators have performed reckless maneuvers, or discharged chaff, or shot off flares, or approached too rapidly or too close to U.S. aircraft.
And thus, as Republican presidential candidate Ron DeSantis warning in a recent op-ed that both parties in the U.S. have been treating the CCP like a friendly competitor, while in fact it's a hostile Marxist regime that will only continue to steal U.S. technology if the U.S. doesn't act strongly against it. Reporting in San Francisco, Iris Tao, NTD News.
President Biden calling Xi Jinping a dictator once again, and China isn't pleased. The Chinese Foreign Ministry labeled Biden's remark, quote, extremely wrong and irresponsible political manipulation on Thursday. Also in the news, the Chinese consulate in Los Angeles reportedly turned its back on the students it hired to welcome Xi. Screenshots of group chat conversations posted online said the consulate promised them $400 stipend, but students say they only got $100. It also said some students wanted to pull out of participating in the event, but were threatened if they tried to leave. Outside of San Francisco, the Chinese embassy has denounced a report suggesting a heightening U.S.-China rivalry. A Washington advisory panel made that conclusion after examining rounds of high-level talks between the two superpowers in the last year. And the report was released just one day before President Biden's meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in San Francisco. The commission says that not only has China yet to take steps to better relations, the regime is also mobilizing its resources to advance global dominance, from building up its military to running influence operations on U.S. soil, all of which make Beijing a top national security rival. According to the panel, the only way forward is long-term strategic competition. American business leaders applauding a propaganda speech by Chinese Communist regime leader Xi Jinping. A member of Congress is now demanding answers, saying Xi commits genocide against innocent people. NTD's Arian Pasdar has more.
Hundreds of American business leaders gave Chinese Communist leader Xi Jinping a standing ovation after a speech on Wednesday night. That's even though he offered no hints of concessions to business. The speech was propaganda at its finest. That's according to a business executive who spoke with the Wall Street Journal on condition of anonymity. Republican Congressman Mike Gallagher told the Journal that it's unethical for Americans to celebrate a regime committing genocide against millions of innocent men, women, and children in Xinjiang. Among the attendees of the dinner were executives from Apple, BlackRock, Pfizer, FedEx, Boeing, and many others. Some of them paid over $40,000 just to sit at the same table as the communist dictator, something Gallagher today criticized heavily. He now wants the organizers of the dinner to release the names of all attendees. Arian Pasdar, NTD News.
During the dinner with major U.S. business leaders, a number of absences have raised some eyebrows. In a 2015 visit, Xi Jinping invited Jack Ma, founder of Chinese tech giant Alibaba, to join him. But this time, barely any Chinese entrepreneurs were present at the dinner, despite it being hosted nearby Silicon Valley. U.S. tech leaders like Mark Zuckerberg also didn't attend. Just days after saying farewell, a pair of iconic black and white bears may soon be returning to the U.S. During a dinner speech with business leaders in San Francisco Wednesday, Chinese Communist regime leader Xi Jinping said China is ready to continue cooperation with the U.S. on panda conservation, calling the bears envoys of friendship. He went on to say he was told that Californians were looking forward to welcoming pandas back, hinting that the next couple of bears might end up in the state's San Diego Zoo. Beijing's panda lending program has long been seen as a form of soft diplomacy. The bears are loaned out to nations friendly to China for certain lengths of time and withheld as punishment for going against Beijing. 3 pandas at Washington's National Zoo returned to China last week. That's after Beijing remained silent on renewing its panda contract, which expires in early December. San Diego bid farewell to its pandas back in 2019. While the bears staying at the Memphis, Tennessee Zoo returned to China this year. Just 4 are left in the U.S., but they too are expected to leave the Atlanta Zoo when their visiting contract expires late next year. A surprising influx of Chinese nationals crossing the border illegally is raising concerns from lawmakers. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports from Capitol Hill.
For the 3rd year in a row, the U.S. has hit a record high number of apprehensions at the border, 2.4 million in 2023, and that's not including the number of people who evaded Border Patrol, and many say they are the most dangerous one. Chinese nationals were apprehended at a rate of 24,000 in 2023. That's 12 times more than last year, and a 7,000% increase from 2021.
I mean, a lot of them are military-aged guys with former ties not only to the CCP but also the People's Liberation Army, the PLA. That's not to say that if we were to defend Taiwan against a Chinese invasion, there wouldn't be saboteurs here.
Chinese nationals on average pay $75,000 to be smuggled into the United States. And it makes you wonder where they get that money.
Special interest aliens from China. What are they doing here? Are they being directed? Is there some larger intelligence?
And when FBI Director Christopher Wray was asked specifically about this issue, he pointed to the non-traditional tactics that are used by the CCP to undermine our national security.
There are individuals who are affiliated with the Chinese government who are the subject of investigations that we have here, and some of those are people that we're searching for.
Wray was also pressed on a different point, specifically the threat of Hamas-related terrorists in the United States. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene pressed the agency to do more to investigate the issue. And this hearing comes at a time when the committee is pressing forward to hold a second impeachment vote on DHS Secretary Mayorkas. The chairman of the committee, Mark Green, tells me that they're aiming to have this vote by the end of the year. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Next, we shift to South Korea. There, the Chinese regime is censoring a performing arts company based in the U.S. Capitol Report host Steve Lance just returned from Seoul, where he and our Korea News Bureau dug deeper. NTD's Evelyn Lee spoke to Steve to hear more on what he found.
So it wasn't just what we're seeing this year. It's been kind of accumulation effect. There have been reports Shenyun has traveled to South Korea, performed before, but over the years, things have gradually gotten worse for them. In 2016, KBS, the largest broadcasting platform in South Korea, owns one of the nicest theaters there, and Shenyun had sold out shows, and just 2 days before they were to perform sold out performances, they were canceled. And so that initially caught our attention. Canceling a sold out show just doesn't make any sense. And so we went there to investigate, and the things that we found after talking to multiple people, even an official from the Chinese embassy in Seoul, really lifted the curtain here as to what's taking place.
How strong of a grip do you think does the CCP have on Korea, since you mentioned that it's been years?
Well, yeah, I mean, to that point, when we first arrived, we actually had a phone number for a CCP official from the embassy, and we called him to find out exactly what the Chinese Communist Party's policy is, specifically with regard to what they're doing with influencing South Korean officials and government and private businesses to cancel Shenyun. And he was open and told us their stance and what they do, and that they will continue to do it. So I think that actually speaks to the fact that the CCP is just so emboldened in South Korea, let alone that they don't take our phone calls here when we call for inquiring about issues, but yet he picked up my phone, knew who I was, continued to talk to me, and told me straight out what their policy is. So I think that kind of speaks volumes right there.
That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for more than 2 years. Last month, YouTube removed our demonetization status, but reimposed it within days. If you'd like to support us, subscribe to our partner platform, APEC TV, where you can watch our full episodes, or consider donating. Find us at donorbox.org/China-in-focus. Here's what to look out for in our second half: a coalition of authoritarianism. A Biden administration official reveals China and Iran are targeting people on American soil. That's if the authoritarian regimes perceive them as threats to their rules. The tactics ranging from physical assault to harassment and even assassination attempts. A look at who the victims are. Plus, the high-level APEC summit saw no shortages of discussion topics between the U.S. and China. What were the biggest takeaways from the two sides? We sat down with Andrew Thornbrook, national security correspondent for the Epoch Times, for more on what they talked about. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you tomorrow.